You asked me for feedback. And so this video is a feedback video. And so I think like Nexium from that standpoint is saying, you're doing really great. I'm trying to think of 5 ways that you could be doing even better. I do have to reach a little bit. But like, here's where we're at. Because I don't actually think that any of these problems are a problem that is like game breaking. If they fix none of these, the expansion could still go down as one of the great expansions versus one of the ones that we wish we hadn't played. Like, they could leave all 5 of these exactly the way they are, and the game could still have success, could still be enjoyed, people would still have a blast, and that's a great place to be, where everything can only be taken from good to great. It's a wonderful place to be. Nixium is somebody that I've only ever known through Asmongold. That's how I was first introduced, but I think had a really nice video quality and really thoughtful editing. So let's give it a go.
Biggest fails so far. Guys, will 10.1 fix Dragonflight? God, I really hope so. Yeah.
Terrible. It's just another buggy expansion full of garbage. Well, that's what most people would say over on the Classic WoW subreddit, but in all seriousness, Dragonflight has been an awesome expansion so far. However, there are some issues right out of the gate that have pissed off a lot of players and have taken a lot of fun out of playing the game for some people, and so we want to talk about that today. The things that Dragonflight needs to fix, or things that they've just done wrong. Locked content. This is something that you will encounter most likely as soon as you hit level 7. However, there is a however here. The issue that we have seen from some comments across the internet is that the endgame content is locked behind the main storyline. High-end crafting gear requires you to complete the entire questline to unlock the Engine of Innovation questline, for example.
So, like, you're not able to unlock stuff unless you do the content for it. I feel like this is only bad if it's a system that you have to do on, like, every character. And, like, also it depends on, like, how long it takes. So, like, for example, if doing the whole quest line takes less than an hour, I don't think that's a big deal, especially if the quest line is meant to teach you what to do. Because
and the new crafting system says that if you want something from another crafter, you can just request it. So, like, it's only if you want to unlock the recipe for you that you need to do 3 minutes of effort.
Because you could easily say, oh, well, then why do it at all if it only takes less than an hour? But I think the truth is that because it makes it easier to do. Like, it makes you understand what you're doing. Absolutely. You don't have to go through all this stuff again whenever you play an alt, do you?
No.
Because, like, I think they should just have a story skip for second character. You do?
No.
You don't have to. Okay, then
no. If you log on to an alt, the moment you zone into the Dragon Isles, you just board the freaking boat. The moment you get off the boat, actually when the boat zones in, you can jump on your dragon. It gives you all your tokens because those are account wide, so you can spend them however you want. Maybe you only have enough tokens to get partially down the tree, or you want to make one of those different choices at the handful of like left versus right moments where you either land and hit them hard or land and get a little buff. And so then you fly off. You can do the campaign quests from any zone that you want if you want to. You could also just not do campaign. That would be an option. Renown, as far as unlocking things like more dailies to do, cosmetics for your dragon or whatever, all of that stuff, that's all account wide. What is not account wide is being able to buy gear off the vendors, which means that it gates them from getting gear too quickly, I guess. I don't really see that big of a deal with that because honestly, you could just restrict the rate at which you add gear to rep vendors over the course of an expansion, and it would kind of settle that or make it cost enough zone currency that it means they have actually played. I don't know. It seems like a weird line to draw. And then recipes, which does sadly mean that if your main is not your crafter and you do have a crafter, they're going to need to do renown. However, whichever character chooses to do the renown carries the whole account. So you just need one character, could be your main, could be your alt, whichever class you like doing open world dailies on, and you just use that character and keep it at the max. And so once you cap it, which is currently 25 to 30, basically at 10 and at 20, you get an account-wide buff to any other classes that you realize, oh crap, I definitely also wanted that recipe.
It's fine. Like, I don't think it is unreasonable that you have to complete the storyline of the game that takes probably like 2 hours at the most to be able to unlock the rest of the content at max level.
I voice acted, sat and chatted, got lost in side quests, the entire thing. It was under 20 hours. Under 20 hours. I think Endwalker took me somewhere between like 40 and 70 on Final Fantasy XIV. So for WoW players to say, oh no, if I have to pay attention, it's half a game. It's half a game. It's nothing. It's an indie title. And you didn't have to do any of that. You could have skipped all those cutscenes. You could have run past the caravans. It is a couple hours of content tops.
Especially whenever most of it is already unlocked. There's just a handful of things that are not. Yeah, I don't really think this is a big deal.
To be fair, this isn't really that surprising that Blizzard would do this because they want players to experience the story that they put so much time into writing and making the cinematics for and whatnot.
I do think that it probably makes the game better if you do have to finish the storyline to access things that make sense in the lore that you would have access to at the end of the storyline. If you have to do it once, I think that this immediately goes into the garbage the moment you have to do it 2 times. Like, do it once, but as long as there's an alt skip available, I see no problem with this.
The alt skip is not only available, you don't even have to click one of those dialogue boxes where if you miss it, you now have to do the beginning of Warlords of Draenor. Maybe there's a way to drop that quest and go back. I don't know. But it just handles it. It's skipped by default. It assumes that if you want to do the story, you only want to do one particular part. Maybe you just want to go do Azure Span again. That's it. You can just skip it. It's handled. And so I think it's fine. I think it's fine. This is the better route. It just takes care of it. And yes, there's a handful that begrudge that couple hours. But you were talking about somebody that was likely willing to push the Mythic grind hard. So they were going to go run Mythic for hours and hours and hours on end. 2 hours of main story. If you've been around a long time, there was a time when we used to have to attune to dungeons and get keys and all of that. Like, this is so unbelievably forgiving compared to WoW of the past that I don't think it's a big deal. Like, maybe it could improve, but I just wouldn't call it like biggest fails. If this is a big fail, Dragonflight is amazing.
Buggy Ores.
What's this?
If you guys have been on any sort of discussion forum about Dragonflight, good luck counting the number of screenshots that you will see of people trying to reach ore nodes that are floating in the middle of the sky or are bugged inside of mountains or are underground. How does this even happen? Don't they have to like manually put them in and position? Like,
maybe they're like randomly applied.
If you're mining in the Dragon Isles, like
that's fine.
I don't think they're manually placed. I think they have a procedural map that just creates the nodes, and then those nodes are fixed nodes. And the reason I think that is because there is no open world environmental storytelling happening with them. It would be interesting if you had nodes along a vein and they could spawn anywhere along it, not just these 4 fixed points that I can get a handy nodes for. An entire zone, anything there. And it would be interesting if they could spawn anywhere along there, but I haven't seen that. I feel like I gather the same node over and over and over and over. So while they don't feel manually placed, they also feel like they lock into the same positions. Maybe that's just in my head. But in addition to that, it would be interesting if they could respond to the world and help tell a story. Imagine if when we fight a rare spawn in the area that is fire aligned, all of the nodes in that area are those like primal fire ones or whatever. And so you're telling me that this area has been impacted by an extra level of fire. It just doesn't seem to do that. There doesn't seem to be any form of thought as gathering being an extension of world building. And as a result, that also by its very nature means that the quality level of the placement doesn't feel as careful. By comparison, the Dragon Isles supply packs, while sometimes they are clipped inside of things, they feel distinctly hidden. So if you do not have an add-on telling you there's one really close to the area and giving you a rough ballpark minus the verticality where it's at, they would be really hard to find. They're under tree roots, they're in bushes, they are tucked away very, very, very carefully. And it would be nice to see ores, herbs, things like this placed just as carefully.
Problem. Like, it's like every single node is hidden or floating.
I do think that's probably what it is, though, right? Like, what do you guys think? That the reason why they did this is to prevent bots from going in a set pattern and to multiple different set locations to, like, add it to, like some sort of, like, random generation of where they are? That's my best guess. I think seeing a floating ore node out there in the world, like, yeah, obviously they shouldn't have this, but it's not really a big deal. I think it's kind of funny.
Something, but it is prevalent enough that every time I go flying around, I encounter at least a small handful of nodes that are bugged or hidden. So due to its frequency and the fact a lot of people are talking about it, and the fact that the nodes are supposed to just be a static part of the world, I have no idea how this has gone unfixed since they first added ores onto the Dragon Isles way back in development, back in the beta and stuff. And to be real here, Blizzard has this reputation of releasing unfinished and buggy expansions, and so something like this, albeit kind of small, needs to be addressed and needs to be fixed. If WoW is going to be the best, we need to demand the best from Blizzard, because after all...
That's true. It's true. Absolutely. There's no reason that ores should be spawning at the top of a tree branch. This is not good. Obviously, it's not a big deal, but it should be fixed.
Number 3, lag. Yeah, we finally arrived to what many consider to be Dragonflight's biggest con, and that is the lag, man, the lag. Now, in my own personal experience, despite playing on the full server of Moonguard US, yeah, I know it's a roleplay realm, don't make fun of me. Despite playing on a full realm, I have not encountered that much lag. The point is, a lot of...
I have.
The devs actually put out a post about this. They put out what caused the lag, what they're doing to fix it. It was a cleverly designed system that didn't work out. We've all made the best choices that we can off the information we had at the time, and sometimes life just doesn't work out. They had backup plans, they had pivots, and they've done a great job of reducing this heavily, very, very quickly, without taking the entire game offline a crazy number of times. It's had to go offline some, but ultimately, I think it was a pretty good handling of the situation. It is a bummer, but the lag is something that has improved as they've gotten more and more of that system cleaned up. Anybody who's been around MMOs for multiple launch weeks across multiple games knows to expect bugs. And a little bit of lag, while it was frustrating, is not nearly as frustrating as something like the Endwalker launch, where you got randomly disconnected and then you got put to the end of the line and you waited to make it all the way to the front of the line. And if you got kicked out of line due to a disconnect or it thought you were AFK or something like that, you would actually have to go back to the bottom of the line to wait in it again. So some people were waiting whole days and not getting to play because they would randomly have a packet loss and they would go all the way to the bottom. Or games that just have huge glaring issues where there are items lost, things like that. Ultimately, like a little bit of lag, the important thing to focus on, in my opinion, when you're talking about launch week is, are the servers up? Yes. Are people that are putting a reasonable amount of effort during reasonable time windows getting to play? Yes. Does that mean somebody who said, well, I have 5 minutes to get online and it's peak hours on a Friday night, I can't believe they didn't let me in immediately? Okay, well, you and everybody else had the same freaking idea. Play a different time slot. I don't know what to tell you. Like, that's launch week. So as long as there are reasonable amounts of playtime being had by a reasonable number of players, I think it's fine. I would love to live in a world where we have these buttery smooth launches and everything's perfect. I think the first game that can do that consistently is going to make everybody else look like idiots. But in general, any MMO that wants to have 3, 4, 5, 10 expansions needs to know that some of them are going to have horror stories associated with them based on unforeseen expansion issues. It's why any new MMO that has not come out that tells you, yeah, our answer is maybe just don't be lazy devs and we're just going to have a good launch. is a terrible idea. Like, that will not work out, and that tells you that if that is their plan, that means they don't have a backup plan. The Zeppelins were put in Dragonflight because that is the smoother process for the server compared to portals. When the Zeppelins failed, they activated the portals as plan B. The reason you don't activate the portals right away is because if a person doesn't get through a portal, they click, portal, and now the server is getting hit with millions of requests, and it brings it down. Your player base is basically DDoSing you.
Lag has been really bad. Like, I don't know about you guys, but I have had so many lag problems playing this game. Like, shit that's like super slow, or like my abilities are taking like 3 or 4 seconds to go off. It's awful.
People have been complaining about the lag that has been polluting this expansion, especially in zones like the Azure Span, the Tuskar area, so much so that people are comparing Dragonflight's lag to Wintergrasp lag back in the release of original Wrath of the Lich King, for those of you guys who might remember that. Now, what's causing all this lag? Well, we're not entirely sure, but most likely it's all the various events that are happening on the Dragon Isles. Whatever the reason, this...
I don't know when Next Games was recorded, but it was a dev blue post, if you want to go look it up, that went over the lag, and it was responded to by a member of the technical team. Azure Span has the Tuskar, which I don't think you're a unique little snowflake if you're somebody who likes the Tuskar. The event that he's doing right now is like... It's like if you had a Black Friday riot like you see on the news where everybody's running in to get TVs that are 90% off. Surrounding a cooking pot of soup. And everything you run around and do, you can randomly get selected to stir the soup, and then you have to like press a button and you're like spinning really fast, and then you have to like tenderize these meat heads, and so these huge fish heads come flying out, and you got to DPS them down, and you're doing all of this to progress this bar, and everybody wants to take part. And then all these little yes chefs, like when you push things, it's like yes chef, and so like it's wildly fun. And that means that if you have a system where having lots of players in one place is a problem, and then you design content that is accidentally good, yeah, that's gonna happen. That's gonna happen. There's about 95,000 people around that cooking pot. It's gonna cause some lag. That was the problem with Wintergrasp. Wintergrasp took the open world PvP of TBC and dialed it to 11. It was awesome. Like, this kitchen duty it's so fun. If any of you have done the campaign quest and you think you're going to take a break, you got a little playtime on there, but you're ready to unsubscribe, go play other things, I get it. I encourage you to go do this before you log out. It's silly and it's goofy, and it's what open world quests should be.
This is a glaring issue for many players.
This has been a glaring issue ever since Mists of Pandaria. Lag in this game, like world PvP, is unplayable whenever it's even 10 versus 10 players in an area. You already have lag. I have never played a game that is more laggy than WoW.
Number 4, getting weaker.
What's this?
So this is a big one. As you go through the Dragon Isles, you will find that despite you gaining talent points and better gear, higher levels and stats, you seem to get weaker compared to the monsters around you, or at least it doesn't really seem like it's making much of an impact. But maybe, to be fair,
I think that's okay. It would make sense that as you level up and you progress through the more difficult parts of the story, that the hardest parts will be at the end.
That's not why this happens. So that's not what it is. It's not some clever difficulty scaling to make the world more scary. That's nothing what it is. And that's why it doesn't necessarily feel like that to all people. So this is by far the single best thing that has been named as a Dragonflight biggest fail, but it did not come from Dragonflight. It is merely present in Dragonflight. People felt this in Shadowlands. People felt this in BFA. What this is tied to is world scaling. So when you have games that allow you to go back and play with newer players, there is a question of what do you do so that you aren't just running around one-shotting things, because that's not necessarily fun to be a new player and you join a random dungeon with a random person, some guy runs ahead, kills the boss, and then it's over. Yeah, it's cool to get loot that fast, but like it just devalues your entire play experience. And it's one thing if it's a friend rushing you through Diablo 2, But for an MMO, it would be nice if your friend could come join you along the path. It's something that Final Fantasy story absolutely needs. And so when they started wanting people to be able to level through the world and have the quest scale and have the mob scale and have players be able to run with players of differing difficulty and all of these things, there was no basis of doing this. That's not how Classic worked. If your friend was level 60 and you were level 20, they would just nerf your experience but one-shot everything. So if you needed the final boss as a quest and you wanted the loot, that was a really good thing. If you wanted the good experience, that was a bad thing. You only need to play with people that are at your exact level. Turns out, after 5 or 10 years goes by, that doesn't feel good. And so what they did is they put in a system after the fact. It was not designed to have this in there. The content was never meant for this, and it is called world scaling. World scaling brings the entire world up through your eyes. You put the world's craziest glasses on, and the entire world looks centered around you. You are now the sun, and everybody orbits you. So, all of your party members in a dungeon, exactly your level. Doesn't matter if I had to bring them down, I had to bring them up, they're your level. And so everything is plus or minus your level. And then to make sure that we're not getting too much experience from doing things like running starting zones, they can put a cap on some areas. And so they can say, this one will scale with you, but only to this point. That way, A, we're not running low level content and getting end game relevant experience. And B, we do have areas that we get to feel like gods because it is kind of fun to occasionally go one-shot things. So that's the general basis of it. But now, how do we calculate power? The way I get more powerful is I slowly build up my level. I build up my character. This RPG element. Ian Hazzikostas has described the relationship between this and things like D&D as an important factor. And so as I gain levels, it should feel substantial, like I'm invested. I'm getting new skills or new attributes or new talents or whatever, and I'm getting new gear. Gear lust is very, very real in World of Warcraft. And so I should feel more powerful. Okay, so that's happening. Awesome. Everything's feeling awesome. Except that everybody else got more powerful too. The moment I leveled up, all the monsters in the world also leveled up. Which means anytime I gain gear, it has to be substantial upgrades to make me feel powerful. And it is. The quest feeds you regular items that are wildly better. I had one item at one point on an alt go up 100 item levels in one go. Okay, well then what's the problem? What are they talking about? What happens if you accidentally level up and didn't find any gear? Well, now the entire world leveled up, but you didn't get any more powerful. Because your power relative to the world is determined by how your item level compares to your level. So if a really, really good, whatever level, really good level 60 has item 250 gear and you have 260, you're a god. If you have 199, you're a bit underpowered. Fine. Now let's take that exact character. Let's level them up 2 or 3 times and they just never found any gear. It happens. Now they're level 63, 64, something like that. They've only released maybe one set. They've gone from 260 to 261. Now their item level relative to the level they are is actually much less god mode. So they actually got weaker, and this feels incredibly potent when you hit max level. Because what is a high item level for a level 70, a max level character in Dragonflight? A high item level is 370, 390, 420. Those are high item levels. What are you when you hit cap? 310? 330? Right? So you, relative to what is high, aren't that good. And so you actually feel your weakest. And this happened when this rolled out in BFA. And with World PvP on, a fresh dinged max level character, which was what, like 110 there, 120? A fresh level 120 could run across a brand new in the expansion character who still had their previous best in slot raid gear from the last expansion, and they would get dominated, utterly destroyed by the lower level character, because your item level relative to your level versus their item level relative to their level, you're the weaker one. You have the weaker gear ratio. And so that's what came out of this scaling system, whether it was intended or not. And so you absolutely do feel weaker. This came out of trying to add a relevant scaling system to a game that was not ever designed to have one. It's why time-worn artifacts exist within crafting. It broke all sorts of stuff. Chromie time feels weird because Chromie time is a band-aid on a system that was never designed to function like that. These expansions are not meant to work this way. Having gear from previous raids now equipable at level 35 or whatever is weird. It is. But it's them trying to say they have one of the largest backlogs of available content in any game, and yet the vast majority of it feels locked away by being obsolete. It's their step towards rediscovering the fun, but it is flawed because it was done late, and it will always be flawed. But this is by far the biggest fail that we found in Dragonflight so far.
This was an issue as soon as they introduced scaling. People would go in with like level 15 priests and just like solo dungeons because of the way that they're scaled with discipline.
Exclusive to Dragonflight, and it has been present in almost every expansion since Legion when scaling was added. It
doesn't really matter. Point is that whenever you get this item, the odds are the previous staff that you had was from like level 21 or something like that. So you've played the game multiple days without getting any fucking upgrades. Then this shit pops out and it's totally different. The problem is you level so quickly in retail, your gear isn't caught up to difficulty. There is that, but I think also like you're getting gear constantly though.
But keep in mind, the first fail was that you had to do a 2-hour MSQ to get all the way to cap. So you're leveling, if you're speed leveling through this expansion, you're leveling at most a single level takes you a half hour as a casual player. There are people that have done this entire level grind like sub 2 or 3 hours. If you took your time like I did, you did this entire expansion over, I think I did, so there were 4 zones, so I did 4 play sessions. And so I sat down and did 1 zone, and when I finished that zone, I logged out. And I did that over 4 separate times. But that means in each of those zones, I was supposed to level 2 or 3 times, right? And so a piece of gear can't last that long. So if this is considered a fail, the first thing can't be a fail, because the first thing's what caused this. And so if you are fixing it the way he's saying, like, man, I really wish I got to spend multiple days with a piece of gear. Well, now that first thing, that can't get fixed because everybody was complaining about having to level for, I got to level for 2 whole hours. Oh no. Okay, well now you should have to level multiple days per level. Like, that's what you asked for. You said, I wish my gear felt impactful. Awesome. Then we are only going to give you 10 drops during the leveling process. That would suck.
Like, there's just so many more sources for gear. Gear doesn't feel as impactful because it's being changed so much more often. Like, for example, whenever I was playing in AQ40, I didn't really feel that much more powerful in AQ40 than I was in BWL. It was about the same.
Know who didn't get any weaker in this expansion? Yeah, number 5, broken tanks. No doubt.
It's fine. It's fine.
Look, no, guys, listen. I'm gonna tell y'all something. Like, that's not how it is.
It's fine.
Tanking is totally fine in Dragonflight.
Time of me writing this video and narrating this is not yet the case. So hopefully it's coming soon. And if they have nerfed them at the time of you watching this, well, excellent. How the hell did this level of class and spec unbalancedness, brokenness, whatever, make it through the beta? I mean, come on, Blizzard, get your act together. But I guess if you're a tank out there, you probably weren't complaining. I guess you guys had a great time. But let's move on to the final point.
I'm not even the good tank, and I think it's fine.
Number 6, a lack of early game.
I mean, they did do the Exile's Reach, and I think that for a new player, doing Exile's Reach is a good experience. Like, if you go into the game, you play Exile's Reach, and then you go through one of the expansions, I think that is a relatively decent experience.
So when Exile's Reach was added, BFA was now going to be old, and Shadowlands was becoming the new shiny expansion. And so there was an assumption at the time that when we roll into whatever comes after Shadowlands, which turned out to be Dragonflight, that it would be Exile's Reach then Shadowlands. But as we got to know the systems of Shadowlands, the story of Shadowlands, it didn't really make sense. And so they've left BFA as the default new player experience. However, I think that Dragonflight actually does a really decent job of telling a good story, introducing a lot of basic quest mechanics in a zone that is engaging and fun and rewarding very early on. Imagine somebody who doesn't have the money for like unlocking the different mounts and flying mounts and what do I even do, and I don't have any mounts unlocked, but they just get dragon flying handed to them.
If you start at level 1 and you're doing those early game professions and you're going through the world, none of this stuff exists. I was hoping when they said, oh, hey, yeah, we're going to do this big profession update system, I thought that was going to impact the early game as well to make professions more relevant while you're leveling up a new character. You know,
that would be awesome, but there is no way I expected that.
I don't think they're ever going to be more relevant. Unless you can craft gear that levels with you, you're going to outlevel the gear so fast that it won't matter.
Imagine if you had knowledge and then you had the little like time-worn tokens and all of, oh my god. Going and getting old recipes would be so fun. I literally never even thought about that until now. At no point did I think that anything they did with crafting and gathering in an upcoming expansion would impact the old, because it never has.
Really, it's the biggest con of Dragonflight in that if you're a new player, the early game really didn't get touched at all with this expansion. And that's a shame, because I've made multiple videos on this channel talking about it. I probably will make some more in the near future. But the early game of World of Warcraft, it's really bad right now, because your game is not going to grow if when the person walks in the door and makes their first character, they're presented to a bunch of garbage, a bunch of boring gameplay.
That's why Exile's Reach is so good, because that's not what they're presented to. Like, the vast majority of what is included in the free trial is covered by Exile's Reach. Like, Exile's Reach is going to be where they spend most of their time. Exile's Reach is a great job, so I don't disagree that it would be awesome if they could build a bridge from Exile's Reach to current content. I think Dragonflight is that bridge. You can't just push people out of Exile's Reach into Dragonflight while that's where we all are, because then they're going to hit max level. But if that's what carried you to 10 levels below max, so you were still in a very learning-based place, and then you got to join us in 11.0, whatever that ends up being, I think that would be amazing.
Play, right? I mean, come on. So that's my big like negative with Dragonflight. Everything else is overwhelmingly positive, aside from some floating nodes, some scaling issues, and so on and so forth. So there's really not much to complain about with Dragonflight.
I feel like if you compare this, like here's one easy way to say it, is like if you compare this list of situations with like how, let's say, I don't know, like how Shadowlands was on release, or how BFA was on release, or anything like that, I think this does very clearly indicate that it's a lot better than it was.
When your biggest complaint is that a node is still harvestable but breaks your immersion by being up in the world, as somebody who said, I hate story and I just want to skip it and get to power progression, but it ruined my world immersion that the ore is up here. If that's your biggest complaint, compared to having to do 90 million dailies so that you can go back through a Maw intro on an alt because you want to experience a different covenant on the same class because you want a PvP as a different spec than you want a PvE, like, this is... like, it's ridiculous. You are focusing on like, well, there's a loose thread on my napkin and this restaurant is ruined. Like, it just, this is unbelievably nitpicky. And so I don't know if he makes one of these for every expansion. And if so, keep doing that. For 11.0, after however many weeks goes by, make another one. But I think what's interesting is if he made one of these for Shadowlands, they were probably issues that it's like, I don't even know how they would fix that. You are asking for something that is wildly flawed, is very bad for the player, and is basically unfixable without just reworking the game from the ground up. And here you're talking about, it'd be cool if they changed a couple of little things that graphically don't look great. It'd be cool if they went through and continued to balance classes like they were already going to do anyway. It would be cool if they started investing in content that they have no history in investing in because the current content is doing well enough on its own. Like, this list of complaints is so small compared to what Shadowlands would have had or BFA would have had, which define recent history for World of Warcraft, that if anything, this video is a huge compliment to Dragonflight. And I think that's what he's saying. Like, this is a compliment. I sat down and I tried to come up with the top 5 because those are one of the numbers you have to use for the YouTube algorithm. And so I came up with the top 5 biggest fails, and I went to sleep on it, and I stayed up on it, and I thought about it through the day. I almost ran off the road while thinking about it in traffic. I was thinking about it in the grocery store. I ended up buying some weird stuff by accident. I stared off blankly while my spouse stared across the table and said, "Are you paying attention to me?" I said, "No, I'm trying to think about the 5 biggest fails of Dragonflight." And after days, the worst things I could come up with are, sometimes, if some people gather on some nodes, the node appears like it's not perfectly grounded in the world. Okay, but did you come up with any bad things? That one. That's gotta count. That's gotta be one. Some classes sometimes are a little bit powerful in some content, in some contexts. But isn't that always true? Mm-hmm. And don't they plan on adjusting that throughout the expansion, even if it's not true? Yeah. And sometimes I feel like the systems are so cool in the current expansion that it would be cool if they also were relevant in the last expansion. I love them so much that I don't like that I can't take them into previous expansions. Has that ever been true in the past? No, that hasn't been true before. So, like, this is a wildly positive post. This post right here, "Wow, Dragonflight's biggest fails so far," is one of the single best compliments to Dragonflight I have seen.
Yeah, like, I think that all of these concerns are relatively valid about, like, you know, how professions could be better for leveling. Sure, yeah, that could happen. And I think that, again, if Blizzard wants to do that, I think it's a relatively easy solution, to be honest. If you compare this to how Shadowlands or BFA was, it is just 1,000 fucking times better.
I'm trying to think of 5 ways that you could be doing even better. I do have to reach a little bit. But, like, here's where we're at. Because I don't actually think that any of these problems are a problem that is, like, game breaking. If they fix none of these, the expansion could still go down as one of the great expansions versus one of the ones that we wish we hadn't played. Like, they could leave all 5 of these exactly the way they are, and the game could still have success, could still be enjoyed, people would still have a blast, and that's a great place to be, where everything can only be taken from good to great. It's a wonderful place to be.
Yeah, I think it's overall good. Yeah, it is an overall good thing.
Cool. That was awesome.